women have no problem to lend money to loved ones and engage in social relations, but they have a huge problem in borrowing that from them.
Welcome to the Lilith podcast. I am Caroline Muriel, your host, and invite you to join me to explore what sovereignty means for us as modern women, just like you and me. The Lilith myth is a story of a woman who stepped into her sovereignty and freedom. She represents an energy within us women that aims for right relationship and equality. And that Lilith energy is on the rise. In the Lilith podcast, we harness the Lilith energy to support us to become aligned, sovereign, and free from our past conditioning to break through to our highest level of autonomy. In the first season of the Lilith podcast, I have in-depth conversations with business anthropologist Lilith Wacker about the money truth of women. You will learn a lot about yourself, about your conscious and unconscious money behaviors, and hopefully it'll be worthwhile listening for you. Today I'm going to talk about money behaviors of women and their purposes. In the last episode, we talked about money decisions, and very tightly connected to that is our money behaviors as women. Welcome, Lilith.
Hello, thanks for having me back.
So last time we talked about money decisions and the 3 needs that needed to be covered. So let's maybe just have a quick recap because they're going to be super important in today's episode as well. What were those 3 needs that needed to be covered?
Yes, so when women spend money, and we have the hypothesis that if every human being spends money, there are 3 basic needs that are being met through those money decisions. And the first need is securing survival. I have food on my table and a roof over my head. The second one is building an own identity. I have a career and I build my personality and I learn and I develop further. And the third one is engaging in social relations, because humans are social beings and we thrive for social relations to be healthy and warm and connecting.
So those were the 3 needs that were uncovered by the study you conducted on behalf of Accenture Song. And today, if we look at an onion, we're going again 1 layer deeper, because we're going to look at the purpose of spending money, of saving money, of lending money, and of borrowing money, because those are 4 behaviors that we as women do regularly. And some of them might be super conscious and some of them might not be so conscious. And what we want to do today is bring them to the surface so that you can make even more empowered and sovereign decisions around money, because you're very conscious about what you're doing. So if we go to the first one, the first money behavior of women, and that's the purpose of spending money, what did you find in the study, Lilith?
Yes, just maybe as a little recap, we have been talking to women in Germany, Austria, and Switzerland with a wide range of, or with a different age range, with different family situations, with different income situations, just to give you an idea of whom we have been talking to. And we have been having conversations with them for over 3 hours, and we talked about money in their everyday lives and the perception of money and so on and so forth. And obviously one part of that conversation was about how they spend money, right? And by synthesizing the stories that we have been hearing, we found a pattern that women, when they spend money, they do it out of 2 reasons. First reason is to reward myself, to give myself something good to treat myself, or to reward others. And if we just stick a little bit to the first one, rewarding myself, it was very much about self-indulgence, like giving myself something, as said. And the other purpose was really like having the claim for self-efficacy. That's how we call this sounds now very academic, I know, but it was
What is it?
really, yeah, exactly. I will give you an example. For example, if I buy myself a nice piece of clothing, I don't want to spend my money on fast fashion, for example. So I pay more for this organic cotton, or for a brand, for example, that I consider more sustainable. So that I not only spend my money for myself, but that I also contribute to the greater good in a perceived positive way.
So if I'm thinking of an example from my yesterday's example, I went on a boat trip on the Lake Geneva. So I treated myself. It was quite an expensive trip, but I felt like I want to do it for myself. But also I thought, well, if I'm super relaxed and very energetic today, then this podcast episode is going to be, more valuable for everybody who's listening to us today. So how would that fit into what you've just described?
Yeah, exactly. It's interesting because beyond the two reasons for spending, we also found that the most examples that women were talking about how they spend money were about food and health, mental well-being, like giving something to myself, a nice treat, a massage, or a boat trip. Interior decisions, or decisions around having a nice home, having a convenient, beautiful, warm home, and clothing. Tatsächlich.
Actually.
My German brain just wanted to say something.
Yeah, that happens. So, yeah, so I get it that we like to do those things to treat ourselves nicely, but also there is a component of others in it, right? I mean, we want to make sure others are doing well too. So if we go back to those three needs that we just uncovered in the last episode that you found, how would that combine or relate to each other?
Yeah, actually, through the money behaviors, through the synthesis and analysis of the money behaviors, for example, spending money to begin with, we found that there was always this, not only this element of I spend money for myself, but also spending or dealing with money also with a purpose to do something good for others. And in this, like in the spending behavior, we heard of stories that it was important to women to reward others when spending money, due to the need to belong to a social group and to contribute to that, right? And also that behavior or that reason for spending money could be split into two categories or groups. One is really gift giving, like really thinking about, hey, my best friend's birthday. I really take a little bit of time and consider what a gift I could give to her to really bring her joy, or him. And the second one is spending time with others in order to build on that relationship and to engage in that relationship and to nourish it.
So that's the third bucket of investing in social relations.
Yes, absolutely. Through the behavior of spending money. So I spend money for others and enjoy that, and enjoy also the relationship that money helps to nourish.
Okay. So ideally, because we said about how women perceive wealth, if we can spend the money equally and split it between securing our survival, if we can spend some of it to build our self-identity and treat ourselves. And then the third one could be engaging in social relations. So when all those three are equally distributed or contributed, then women would say, yeah, I'm spending my money in a healthy way.
Or they would say, I'm wealthy.
Yeah.
That is like if all three needs are being catered on through whatever money behaviors, women would consider themselves as wealthy, no matter how much money was on the bank account.
Yeah.
Another interesting thing here is that we found in the study that the purpose of spending has really got to do with three things: fulfilling your own wishes and the other wishes and needs, and then, when possible, combining those to create a win-win situation, very unconsciously. So women do that in a very, very natural way. So it's really this three step: what get I out of that, what do others get out of that, and can we create a win-win, which reflects again in the perception of money rather being something like barter, instead of just accumulating that for your own purposes.
Yeah. So I think that sums it nicely up regarding why women are spending money. And I think I wanted to cover that because, like you said in the beginning, there's not a single woman listening to us who has never spent a single penny, dime, euro, whatever. So, and I'm wondering to everyone, every woman who is listening to us, how you would contribute or distribute that in your behavior. What's your purpose of spending the most or the biggest one? So if we move on to the next purpose, the next money behavior of us women, and that's saving. So I think there are similar patterns, but maybe you can enlighten us with your insights.
Exactly. We found very similar patterns and reason why women save money. We found mainly three reasons. First of all, being saving to secure liquidity, or we have liquidity for cases of emergency, or for like bigger future life plans, right? I'm saving for my education, I'm saving for traveling the world, or I'm saving for the case that the washing machine breaks down or the car breaks down. So that is number one. Reason number two is saving for bigger purchases. Like, I know I want to own property at some point in my life, and I'm starting saving for that, like really big purchases, mostly property, and owning a home is still a big wish for many, many people. And the third reason is saving for social purposes like group travel, or also, which was really interesting, helping friends in need and or family members in need of money. So there is also this notion of, I'm not only saving for my own emergency cases, but also for my loved one emergency cases, so that I can help out financially.
Yeah, that's very interesting. So I feel like for me, what comes across, but that might my personal way of hearing things, is that the securing survival has got a big part in the saving, not only my own one, but then the social relations come in also for someone else. So I think that all makes a lot of sense. And I don't want to go too deep into that topic today because I think everybody listening to us has got their good reasons to save. What I want to jump into, because I find it very interesting, is what you just said about we're saving even for others in case they go into debt or they have a need. And then we would, as women, lend money to those individuals.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Because when we started talking about, or when we were asking the women if they lend money to other people, and they said, yes, of course. That's I also save money in order to be able to lend to my loved ones. And lending money to beloved friends, family members, or others in need is a very popular form of investing in social relationships for many women, which is super interesting because the normal claim is, due to inflation and saving is not good, you're losing money, is like investing in the stock market, or investing like in
Yeah.
in financial products, but the most popular form of investment was lending to loved ones. And for many women, the exchange or the return on investment, if you want, has been this win-win situation between human beings and having a strong connection.
Yeah, there it is again, the win-win. That is very important to us as women, it seems. So even when it comes to lending money, and I was hearing that story from a woman that I found quite interesting because she was lending money to somebody, a beloved one, but then she didn't get that return on investment, which was kind of like more social engagement. So that was kind of like breaking that pattern of wanting to help out, but also expecting something on the social account in return, which created a lot of emotions for her and a lot of stress. So I guess if it goes well, it goes well. But if it doesn't go well, it can be a source of frustration. And we have to think about, okay, do we want to lend, and why are we lending it in the first place? And that's also part of why we're doing this episode, so that we really uncover those subconscious thoughts and behaviors around money.
Yeah, I think there's even this saying like friendship or love ends with money matters. I don't know if that is translated in a great way though, but I think the interesting point from your example is really the expectation management. I give you something, therefore you owe me something. And being or becoming aware of your own expectations or the expectations from others towards you and vice versa. This is the level where we want to be with our awareness, because then we are tapping into expectations towards gender roles, expectations towards the role as a friend or as a business partner or as your spouse. So then at this point we have that depth to think about, what role do I have in my own life and in the life of other people, and how does that reflect in the quality of our social relation and vice versa.
So if I lend money to somebody as a woman, I would do that from the whole of my heart if I decided to do that. Like I would not necessarily, or I would probably think there's enough trust, and I'll trust that person that they will pay me back when they can. I wouldn't even put a date and interest rate or anything on it. So that would really be my form of social relationship building with that person. And I would do it not necessarily because I would expect anything in return.
That is one form that we also heard, like, of course, I invest in the startup of my nephew, and I don't even expect this money to come back to me because I just want to have him to make this experience in life, and so on and so forth. The other alternative, or the other reasoning behind lending money to others, is our relationship is so transparent and trustful, and our expectations from, or our value set much rather, is so similar that I don't have to worry that this money doesn't come back.
Hmm. So that means you need to have a considerable amount of money on the bank account. Or did you also see that with women who actually were not in a financial position to actually lend money, because that would go at the expense of them securing their survival?
We saw that also, like with very young people who didn't have much money on their bank account, but still enough that they would need for their immediate survival in order to help out friends in need.
Mm-hmm. I think it comes back to those social relations, right? That they are so strong and they are so much ingrained. So that third bucket of engaging in social relations seems to be so solid, so ingrained for whatever reason in us, that we would even trade off the securing survival for some time in certain circumstances.
Yeah. And this was our hypothesis, or the sense making in the study was like, this is deeply connected with the notion of money can be character harming. If you have too much money, it can harm your character because you lack in your social relation skills in some or the other way. And it was much more important to, let's say, have not much money, but a good social network and social security through loved ones and through other people, like belonging to that community that could help you out, as opposed to having loads amounts of money on your bank account and being super lonely.
Yeah. I feel like this is also a lot of unconscious behavior, the money behaviors that we're just talking about. Really deep diving. There's nothing wrong about lending money for whatever reason. And I think it's great that we can help people out. I think my point or our point here is to really be conscious and really seeing, okay, my money decision and my money behavior, in which bucket, in which of those three needs is it falling? Very often it's probably falling into the social relations bucket. And making more sovereign decisions of, I do this consciously and I'm not going to expect anything in return, or maybe you expect something in return. Both is equally fine. It's just being aware what we're doing with our money. That's the point of the Money Truth of Women and the episode we're talking about today.
Yes, and related to that, please be aware of what is a truth and what is a prejudice. Like, this saying of money is character harming is definitely like biased and has some prejudice elements in it. Whereas if you try and aim for balanced securing survival, building on self-identity, and engaging in social relations is much more true to the reality of dealing with your money, and striving for that is much more helpful towards the way to become sovereign with your money, instead of relying on sayings like money is character harming, because where are the numbers to that?
Yeah. Well, it's the same thing, like you say, like if we have that saying in German, and it might be also existing in English, that the friendship ends where money is involved. By what you found in your study, that doesn't seem, or in the study that you conducted, that doesn't seem to be necessarily the case.
Exactly. But I think it's really surprising how deep those sayings and perceptions around money are actually also influencing how we deal with money, because of outer perception, inner perception, and all those elements, right? So
Yeah.
that was also the reason why we, with this study, have been trying to introduce like a new logic to those kind of perceptions, and how you make sense of your money.
Yeah. And we're uncovering that. We're in the course of uncovering that in this first season of the podcast. I was very surprised about the behaviors, the money behaviors about lending, but I was even more surprised about the money behaviors about borrowing. Maybe tell us how women perceive borrowing and what you found.
Yeah, I mean, borrowing was not a very favorite money behavior for women, because it was a hindrance to financial independence. So we found that by women telling us that if they were borrowing money, they would like to have involved like a neutral institution like the bank or a financial institute, instead of borrowing money from relatives, in-laws, own parents, with the purpose to stay independent. That was a really, really important thing. And if you think about this, there is like a wide spectrum. On the one hand, women have no problem to lend money to loved ones and engage in social relations, but they have a huge problem in borrowing that from them.
That's amazing. I mean, that's a big discrepancy that we need to be aware of. So we would not well, we would blink and we would say yes to lending money to somebody, but we wouldn't necessarily want to borrow back from them. So we would give, but we wouldn't be allowing ourselves to take. And why was that?
Yeah, because as I said, it is deeply connected with that fear of becoming super dependent if something goes wrong from the loved ones. And no one likes to have the feeling that you owe someone something, because they could ask you to do stuff that you wouldn't want to do, right? Or to keep in roles that you don't strive for. So it's so the building own identity need is in danger, and also the securing survival need is in danger when you borrow money from your social relations. That is the notion behind that. Obviously, we are on the complete unconscious level right now.
Yeah.
But if I think about that, I can totally relate to that. So we had young women who said like, okay, I'm moving into this new apartment, and my mom wanted to give me the money for the furniture, and I'd rather decided to go into a little debt with the furniture house instead, to have also the feeling of independence that the furniture that I bought it myself, even if I had to go in debt for that. But the debt was connected to a neutral institution, and that was super important.
And also, I think you'd probably have to have a lot of trust in that other person. And like, if I'd borrow money from somebody, I would need to feel that we have a very, very deep and trustful relationship. There it comes again. The social relations are very important, because I wouldn't want to jeopardize maybe a friendship because of that borrowing act by me. So I'd rather go to the bank where the conditions are very clear. They say, okay, you pay that interest rate, you'll pay it back by then. So I can plan around it, and I know exactly what I owe. When I have friends, then I don't know exactly how that owing will turn out in the next, let's say, 1 or 2 years, depending on how big the amount is. I'm not talking about 5 euros because I forgot my purse at home. I'm talking about more money. Like, for example, if I wanted to buy a house, then I would never ever go to a friend or even a family member, if I can avoid it, and ask for borrowing money. Me personally.
Yeah. Or another example would be, that's why I said it's so deeply connected to building on identity. Imagine you want to buy a house with your partner, and you have to borrow some money from your in-laws, otherwise you can't afford that mortgage or whatever. But at the same time, you strive for having a career shortly after you gave birth. But your in-laws have like a much more traditional way of thinking about how children should be raised.
Mm.
And then you are shifting the pure expectations around that amount of money towards gender roles, towards the perception of what is a good mother, what a woman should be or should not be, where we are deeply in the conversation of gender inequality. And even though the women wouldn't point out exactly that, it is deep in our DNA to feel that inequality, and also to fear that expectation on traditional gender roles. And this is how deep the inequality actually sits, and how tricky that is in between. I want to evolve, I want to build my own identity according to like a new set of values, versus, yeah, but I have borrowed money from people who have another set of values and try and have other expectations on my behavior. And that is the opposite of freedom.
Yeah. And I think also that's why we're doing this podcast, because I think the more conscious we become about those very subconscious mechanisms, the more we can decide, do I really want to go into this dependency? Do I really want to ask for that money? So it can be only just a gut feeling. No, it's maybe not a good idea. Or it can be like, no, because I want to work just after I give birth. And I know that this will not land well, but because my in-laws have invested into my house or into their house partly, I can't make that decision freely. I just want to wrap up here and talk about, okay, the purpose of spending, saving, borrowing, and lending is always going back to those three buckets that we discussed in the last episode, which is securing survival, which is investing in social relations, and that is also in building your self-identity. By looking at all those areas that we have discussed, I get the feeling that the social relations, the engaging in social relations, takes such a big, big chunk. What's your perception, Lilith?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that was in the end the outcome of the study. That was the big surprise, because normally the perception about money, and also when you open a bank account or if you decide on saving money into an ETF, it is like a contract between an individual and a financial institution. But we found that many decisions around money are not only an individual act, but also a social act, especially for women, because of the gender pay gap and because of unpaid care work and because of gender roles. And this is something that we need to put into the equation in the future if we want to get rid of financial inequality. We have to go so deep because the financial equality and equality as such is sitting so deep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's really, if you take one thing away from today's episode, it's like we invite you to really go back to this pie and see all the behaviors you're doing. If you're spending, saving, lending, borrowing, see how big of a chunk the part is where you're investing in social relations, and think down the line, what does that mean? Because every decision you're making, every behavior you're doing is going to have an impact on the other two, which is securing survival and building self-identity. And as we saw from the study results, like when those are equally contributed, then this is what women would say, this is wealth. So are you feeling wealthy? That would be my question. And if you want to dig deeper into it, there's a worksheet. You can go to lilithpodcast.com and download it so that you can really write down and map out what are you investing in social relations, securing survival, and in your self-identity to really become conscious and also make more sovereign decisions around your money and time and anything else you're investing. So anything else to add from your side, Lilith, before we close for today?
Yeah, I think start from the point where any of the three areas are better developed or less developed, which is the normality if money is somewhat scarce, or where you have to think in a trade-off. Do I decide for securing survival? Do I decide for building identity? Or do I decide for engaging in social relations? And see the quantity and quality of your decision making in favor of those three things. That's just it. And then ask yourself the question, if you sometimes maybe feel an unfairness, or maybe feel like, okay, something is a little bit off here? Does it maybe have something to do with that? And does that reflect your values and your future plans, and does support your autonomy as a woman?
Yeah, I love
So
that.
far, so good.
I love that. So yeah, that's an open invitation. I'll also put the link to this worksheet below. Thank you so much, Lilith. I look forward to next week.
Me too. It has been a pleasure, like always.